Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1584B, and today's date is June 5th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Going Deep Down the Rabbit Hole, Follow the White Rabbit. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, something big is happening today. We see that there is an FBI counterintelligence chief testifying, but he's testifying behind closed doors. Now, this is Bill Priestap, and Priestap will be answering questions about the Hillary Clinton email case, as well as the counterintelligence operations on the Trump campaign, both of which he oversaw. Now, Priestap was the direct supervisor of Peter Strzok. All accounts say that Priestap is cooperating witness. In other words, if there's one person who can confirm that the FBI counterintelligence operation on the Trump campaign was politically motivated or that malfeasance occurred during the process, it's Bill Priestap. Now, while the session will be closed doors, will be behind closed doors, we know that leaks most likely will be forthcoming because it seems like this is standard operating procedures and the deep state likes to leak this information. Now, there are a couple of questions that we need to answer. First, who is Bill Priestap? Why was Devin Nunes so confident when he released the memo? Why did all the GOP, HP, SCI members happily allow the Democrats to create a 10-page narrative? Why was this? Well, Bill Priestap is central to all of this. How do we know this? Well, his name is not really mentioned. They kind of leave his name out when they're talking about it. They talk about his position, but they never really mention his name. We also know that he was Peter Strzok's direct boss. If anyone in Congress really wanted to know if the FBI paid for the Christopher Steele dossier, well, Bill Priestap is the guy who would know everything about everything. So let's go over this. Bill Priestap is number one. Before getting demoted, Peter Strzok was number two. The investigation into Donald Trump was a counterintelligence operation, and that operation began in July 2016. Priestap would have been in charge of that, along with all other FBI counterintelligence operations. Peter Strzok was specifically in charge of the Trump counterintel op. Strzok would be reporting to Priestap on every detail and couldn't make a move without Priestap's approval. On March 20th, 2017, congressional testimony, James Comey, was asked why the FBI director did not inform congressional oversight about the counterintelligence operation that began in July 2016. Comey said he did not tell congressional oversight he was investigating presidential candidate Trump because the director of counterintelligence suggested he not do so. Now, this is a very important detail because he doesn't mention his name. He just mentions the title, his position. So we have the FBI director, James Comey, telling Congress on March 20th, 2017, that the reason he didn't inform the Statutory Oversight Gang of Eight was because Priestap recommended he didn't do it. Apparently, according to Comey, Priestap carries a great deal of influence if he could get his boss to not perform a statutory obligation simply by recommending he doesn't do it. Then again, Comey's blame casting there is really called creating a fall guy. Comey was ducking responsibility in March 2017 by blaming Priestap for not informing Congress of the operation that began in July of 2016, 9 months prior. In essence, Priestap was James Comey's fall guy. We knew at the time that Priestap would likely see this the same way. The guy would have too much to lose by allowing Comey to set him up. So, Priestap might have flipped. Why would he take the fall for the operation when there were multiple people around the upper levels of leadership who carried out the operation? And you have to remember, Priestap, he has money. And I don't think he wants to lose any of it. And I don't think he wants to take the fall for this. And if you really think about this, Priestap would have needed to authorize Strozik to engage with Christopher Steele over the Russian dossier. He would have needed to approve of the underlying investigation process used for both FISA applications, June 2016, October 21st, 2016. He would be the person to approve of arranging, paying, and reimbursing Christopher Steele for the Russian dossier used in their counterintelligence operation and subsequent FISA application. Without Priestap involved, approvals, the entire Russian Trump counterintelligence operation just doesn't happen. Everyone around Priestap, above and below, were caught inside the investigative net. Priestap made the decision after Comey's testimony on March 20th, 2017, when he realized what was coming. So he flipped. And you have to remember, like I said before, he's well off financially. He has too much to lose. He and his wife, Sabina Menchel, live a comfortable life in a $3.8 million D.C. home. She comes from a family of money. It's all making sense now. When Devin Nunes interviewed Priestap and Jim Rybicki prior to putting out the memo process into place, Rybicki quit. Priestap went back to work. And to this day, Priestap remains the assistant FBI director in charge of counterintelligence operation. So right now, we know that Priestap is having discussions behind closed doors. And Nunes and the rest, they already knew that he flipped. They gave him information. This is why they were confident putting out the memo. And at this point, it could be over for Comey and the rest. And we can see that the walls are closing in, and they're closing in very, very fast. And a lot of these individuals, they might not want to take the fall for what has been happening, and they might squeal on others. They might suicide themselves, or they might run. So this is something that we're watching for, and everything is coming out in the open, and we're going to get a lot more information, and we can see that things are progressing very, very rapidly. We see at the same time that this is all happening, governments and social media companies, they're collaborating to censor anyone that would dare question mainstream media narratives. We see out in France right now, they have a law that they're proposing that would give authorities the power to immediately halt the publication of information deemed to be false. Well, how do they know it's false? Well, they will decide. They will decide if it is false, just like Facebook, where they had the fact checkers. We know Google was trying to use different methods of trying to figure out how they can say that this information is true. And remember, most of the time where they're checking all the information that they're checking, it goes back to the intelligence agencies. It goes back to the propaganda outlets, and it confirms their stories. I mean, if you really think about it, go back in time. Anyone who countered the Russian collusion story, that was fake news. The corporate media had the real story. But now it turns out that the corporate media had nothing. They lied about it. They made stuff up. That is the fake news. And everyone that countered the Russian collusion, that was the real news. And we know that Mueller, he hasn't found anything yet. Everything he's doing with Manafort has nothing to do with Russian collusion. And he's still going after Manafort. Now, Q has come out and he said that Manafort is a plant. And I think Mueller is just putting things out there just to put things out there. And judges have already said, this has nothing to do with Russian collusion. Show us information that has to do with Russian collusion. They can't find anything. Even the European Union, they're pushing their laws into place to shut down anyone that counters what the corporate media is saying or what the government is saying. The same thing here in the United States. We have YouTube, we have Google, Facebook, Twitter, and the rest, where they're creating new systems to try to shut down that. They tried other systems in the past. Facebook has moved from their news stories now to breaking news stories. They got rid of their fact checkers. They're trying to have the people vote which are the reputable media outlets. And of course, the corporate media, they're all one and the same, so it really makes no difference whatsoever which one you pick. They're all going to repeat the same exact stories. And once again, they're trying to figure out a way to counter everything. Remember, if you go back in time before the internet, they were able to control the flow of information because there were only a certain number of news outlets, and they controlled all of them, and it was very easy to control. Now with the internet, many people are doing research, many people are looking into things, many people are reporting on things, and they don't want this information out there. We see the North Korean summits, they are moving forward, and right now Pompeo is saying, listen, we don't want Bolton involved in the North Korean talks. And again, I believe Bolton was brought on for one reason and one reason only, to watch the neocons, to watch how they move, how they operate, what they're doing. Basically, the Patriots are keeping the enemy very, very close to watch over them as they move to the next phase after North Korea, which is Iran. And we see that right now. They don't want Bolton anywhere near the negotiations with North Korea. That should tell you something right there. We see right now, it looks like it's confirmed that the U.S. and Turkey, they have agreed on a roadmap, and it looks like the Kurds are being left out in the cold. And we see already that the funding for the Kurds, the Kurd army, has been cut. The funding for the White Helmets has been cut. The training programs for the moderate rebels, which is really the terrorist groups, have been cut. The funding has been cut. All of this is being cut. And what we see happening right now, well, the Kurdish-led political group, they're going to be leaving Manbij. They're also prepared to negotiate with the Syrian government in Damascus. There's a report out there claiming that the Kurd leadership is going to be talking with the Syrian government. There are no preconditions, and we can see that everything is changing. Remember, the deep state, what they really wanted to do was take the Kurd region in Syria and Iraq and break them off from both of those countries. Now we see the opposite happening, where the Kurds need to talk to the government of Syria because they're part of Syria. And it looks like the Syrian government and the Kurdish leadership, they're going to come together. And the Kurds are going to leave different areas. And as they leave the areas, it's going to allow the U.S. troops to say, you know something? We don't need to be here. Actually, they never needed to be there because the deep state plan was to use these regions to separate the countries. Now, strategically, look what's happening. There's no more support for the Kurds. That is falling by the wayside. If Putin can get Syria to have Iran leave certain areas and then eventually leave the country and have Russia fill the void, the coalition forces do not need to be there and the troops will be coming home. And we know already the Iraqi leaders, they already said, we do not want the U.S. in our country. Guess what's going to happen with other countries? They're going to follow. We already see with Syria and Russia, they have already inked a deal, and Russia will allow at least 2 commercial flights from Damascus to Moscow, and we're going to see flights going back and forth, and this is just the beginning. We also see the Syrian armed forces, they have discovered a Islamic State training camp for children in Syria. Now remember, the Islamic State is the paid mercenary army of the deep state. They had no problem training young children to become terrorists. And the group was called Young Lions of the Caliphate. And they found this whole entire area that was the training ground to basically train these young individuals to go fight for the deep state. So if the deep state has no problems training children to become terrorists, what else are they capable of? Well, we know what they're capable of. They're capable of a lot more. And we can see with human trafficking, pedophilia, and everything else, they are capable of all of this. Now, what's very interesting is that a former Defense Intelligence Agency officer was arrested Saturday afternoon on 15 federal charges, including the attempted transmission of national defense information to China. And this is Ron Rockwell Hansen, 58, a resident of Syracuse, Utah. He was taken into custody while he was on his way to Seattle, Tacoma International Airport, and it looks like he's been passing information to China. And of course, this is an act of treason. We also had another individual back in January who was an ex-CIA officer, Jerry Chun-Shing Lee, 53. He was arrested at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport and indicted last month on charges of spying for China. So we see right now that all this information is coming out right now. There are arrests being made. And then we move on to Q. And there are certain posts in Q, and we're going back in time right now, and what is happening at the borders of California, Arizona, in this area. Now, a group called Veterans on Patrol, they have uncovered a child trafficking network in Tucson, Arizona. And it was called Operation Backyard Brawl. Where are the children? And we can see right now, and Annan summed all of this up. And this has to do with a cement company called Cemex. One of the biggest cement companies in the world leads to one of the biggest sex cults in the world, leads to one of the biggest banking families in the world, leads to one of the biggest foundations in the world, leads to one of the biggest happenings in the world. Now, to break this down, child trafficking camps were found in Tucson, Arizona. 4 this week connected to John Benet Ramsey case in Arizona. Land is owned by Cemex. Carlos Slim, owner of Cemex, is also second largest stakeholder of the New York Times. Cemex is a partner of the Clinton Global Initiative and donor to the Clinton Foundation. Cemex linked to Haiti through Clinton Foundation. Cemex is also owned by Bronfman Rothschild. Sarah Bronfman's husband becomes head of Libya-USA Trade Initiative. Cemex is under U.S. Department of Justice investigation. March 14th. We see Emiliano Salinas is son of former president of Mexico. Salinas is also an ex-member of Nexium. Salinas worked for Lazard Investments. Lazard Investments handled the restructuring of Cemex. Jonathan Rothschild is the mayor of Tucson. So when we look at this, we can see that they are involved. And we're going deep down the rabbit hole. And we need to understand that they had this system where they were using it to push children through the system. And I just want to go back to Q's post because now they're starting to make sense. If we go back to post 1072, April 7th, 2018, the post said, border states are very key, bigger than you can imagine. The pipeline. Now, with Cemex, with these companies, they had this tunnel system where they dug for cement and stuff like that, and they had to get the materials to create the cement, and they had this huge, vast tunnel network. And from Q, what he's been posting, now it's starting to make sense, because if we move on to the next post, which is on April 23rd, 2018, down a little bit, he says many different things. Q says many different things, but said, why are border states like Arizona, California so important? And again, we go up to where it says the pipeline. It's not a Republican versus Democrat thing. This is bigger than you can imagine. And it tells us that this is bigger than any of us could have imagined, because we're going deep, deep down into the rabbit hole, and we're starting to find out things that are just completely unbelievable. And there are so many groups that are associated with this. The Clintons, which we kind of knew, the Rothschilds, which we kind of knew, and we go down and we can see that there are many government officials around the world that are all connected to this. And we see right now that all of this is going to be coming out very soon, and there's already an investigation going on. And this is why Trump created these executive orders where he can go in, the government can go in and take the assets of these individuals, no matter if they're here in the United States or not in the United States. And we can see right now that they're closing in on all of this, and all of this is going to come out, and a lot of people are going to be shocked. Actually, Q has said that this is going to be something that's going to shock the world, because This has been kept a secret for a very long time. Yes, people have pointed fingers to it, but now we can see all the connections, who's part of it, how they work their system, what they've been doing. And the vets, they are investigating. The Department of Justice is involved right now, and this is going to be huge. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.